What if I told you that the most heartbreaking moment in Rush history wasn't a song, it was a wave goodbye? On August 4, 2015, thousands of fans packed the Forum in Los Angeles, expecting an unforgettable concert. What they didn't realize was that they were about to witness the final live performance of Rush's legendary lineup: Geddy Lee, Alex Lifeson, and Neil Peart. No dramatic farewell speech, no announcement that this was the end, just one quiet moment that would haunt fans for years. The R40 Live Tour had been promoted as a celebration of Neil Peart's 40 years with Rush. But behind the scenes, there was growing concern. Peart had made it clear that years of relentless touring had taken a physical toll. He was ready to step away from life on the road, even as his bandmates still loved performing. As the concert unfolded, the band traveled backward through its history, ending where it all began, with classics from the early days. Fans cheered, sang every lyric, and hoped the rumors of retirement weren't true. Then came a moment no Rush fan will ever forget. When the final notes faded, there was no emotional farewell speech and no promise that Rush would return. Instead, Geddy Lee, Alex Lifeson, and Neil Peart stood together one last time, soaking in the deafening applause. Then, in a simple but unforgettable gesture, they joined hands, took a final bow, and quietly walked off the stage. For many fans, it didn't feel like the end. Bands often say goodbye, only to announce another tour a few years later. Rush had survived lineup changes, changing musical trends, and decades in one of rock's most demanding careers. Surely this couldn't be their last show, could it? But those closest to the band knew the truth. Neil Peart had spent years battling the physical demands of touring. In later interviews, he explained that chronic tendon pain and other age-related issues made it increasingly difficult to perform at the level he expected from himself. Rather than continue when he felt he couldn't give 100%, he believed it was time to stop touring while Rush was still at its best. Fans didn't know it yet, but that quiet walk off the stage wasn't just the end of a concert. It was the end of one of the greatest live acts in rock history. For years after the R40 Tour, fans held on to hope. Maybe Rush would reunite for one more concert. Maybe Neil Peart would change his mind after taking time away from the road. Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson never ruled out making music together, but they also made one thing clear: Rush was only Rush if all three members were involved. Then, on January 10, 2020, the unimaginable happened. Neil Peart had died 3 days earlier, on January 7, after privately battling glioblastoma, an aggressive form of brain cancer. He was just 67 years old. His family had chosen to keep his illness private, and even many people close to the music world had no idea he was sick. The announcement sent shockwaves across the globe. Tributes poured in from fellow musicians, fans, and drummers who had spent decades inspired by his unmatched precision, creativity, and lyrics. Suddenly, that quiet walk off the stage in Los Angeles wasn't just Rush's final performance, it had become Neil Peart's final goodbye to the world. For millions of fans, the ending they never wanted had already happened, and they hadn't even realized it. In the months that followed Neil Peart's passing, one question echoed through the rock world: could Rush ever continue? The answer came from the two people fans trusted most. Geddy Lee and Alex Lifeson both said that Rush, as the world knew it, was over. They continued to make appearances together, perform at tribute events, and even collaborate on new music outside the band. But they repeatedly emphasized that replacing Neil Peart was never the plan. To them, Rush wasn't just a band. It was a lifelong friendship built on nearly 5 decades of trust, respect, and shared history. That truth became especially clear during the 2022 tribute concerts honoring Taylor Hawkins. When Geddy and Alex returned to the stage with guest drummers, the performances were celebrated as heartfelt tributes, not a Rush reunion. It reminded everyone that Neil's absence could be honored, but never erased. Fans who had spent years hoping for one last tour finally faced reality. The final bow in Los Angeles hadn't been the beginning of another chapter. It had quietly closed one of rock music's greatest stories. As the years passed, fans began watching Rush's final concert with different eyes. What once felt like the end of a tour became something far more emotional, a final chapter that no one knew they were witnessing. The closing moments of the R40 show took on a heartbreaking new meaning. Neil Peart didn't deliver a farewell speech. He didn't ask for sympathy or attention. True to his reserved personality, he let the music speak for him. One last performance, one last bow, then he disappeared into retirement with the same quiet dignity that had defined much of his life. Geddy Lee later reflected that Rush's story had reached its natural conclusion, while Alex Lifeson admitted there would never be another Rush without Neil. Their words confirmed what fans had slowly come to accept: the chemistry that made Rush extraordinary could never be recreated. Today, every replay of that final concert feels less like a goodbye to a band and more like a thank you letter from three lifelong friends to the fans who stood beside them for over 40 years. Looking back now, it's almost impossible to watch Rush's final performance without feeling a lump in your throat. For decades, Rush defied every expectation. They never chased trends, they never relied on scandals or flashy headlines. Instead, Geddy Lee, Alex Lifeson, and Neil Peart built one of rock's most respected legacies through musicianship, loyalty, and an unwavering commitment to their craft. Their final concert reflected everything they stood for. There was no manufactured drama, just three lifelong friends doing what they loved, giving everything they had until the very last note. In many ways, that's exactly how Rush wanted to be remembered. The heartbreaking truth is that fans didn't know they were saying goodbye forever. When Neil Peart quietly waved to the crowd and walked off the stage in Los Angeles on August 4, 2015, no one could have imagined it would be his final public performance. His passing in January 2020 transformed that ordinary farewell into one of the most emotional moments in rock history. But perhaps that's why Rush's ending feels so powerful. It wasn't marked by controversy or conflict. It was defined by gratitude, friendship, and the rare decision to leave on their own terms. Few bands stay together with their classic lineup for more than 40 years. Even fewer end their journey with the respect and admiration Rush earned from fans and fellow musicians around the world. Today, every time The Garden, Closer to the Heart, or Tom Sawyer begins to play, it reminds listeners of something bigger than music. It reminds them of a band that never compromised, a drummer whose brilliance changed generations, and a farewell that became more meaningful with every passing year. From Rush fans, August 4, 2015 wasn't simply the end of a concert. It was the goodbye that broke every Rush fan's heart. Thanks for watching. If Rush's music has ever meant something to you, share your favorite Rush memory in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories celebrating the legends of rock.